Good evening. I'm Marilyn Kushner, New York Historical Society's curator and head of the Department of Prints, Photographs, and Architectural Collections. Tonight, for the next installment of our curatorial confidential series, I am pleased to be joined by the co-curators of Hope Wanted, poet and journalist Kevin Powell, and photographer Kay Hickman. The exhibition features more than 50 photographs taken by Kay, along with 14 audio interviews with the photographer's subjects conducted by Kevin during the team's intensive two-day odyssey across the city on April 8th and 9th, 2020. Before we begin tonight's discussion, I would like to thank our trustees, our Chairman's Council, and all of our members and other generous donors. Your support allows New York Historical to continue to pursue our mission to make history matter, especially in these times. We are thrilled to have you reopen, our doors reopen to you. To reserve your timed entries tickets to either Hope Wanted or the exhibitions inside the building, please visit our website at nyhistory.org. Before we launch into our program, I want to let you know that it will last approximately 45 minutes, including 15 minutes for questions and answers at the end, which you can submit to us by the Q&A function on your Zoom screen at any point during the presentation. We have disabled the chat function, so please do make sure to use the Q&A. After the presentation, we will get to as many questions as we possibly can. And I thought about how I was going to intro this exhibition to you, and then I realized that the best way to do that would be to read you the introduction that was put together by Kevin and Kay. So here it is. When Kay Hickman and I decided to risk our health and visit all 5 boroughs of our beloved New York City on Wednesday, April 8th and Thursday, April 9th, 2020, during the first major peak of COVID-19, we were nervous and, yes, terrified. But we felt it our duty as documentarians to record our city in a way that was not happening, to actually visit Brooklyn, the Bronx, Manhattan, Queens, and Staten Island. Kay, a photographer whose work has appeared in the New York Times, and I, a poet, journalist, and author of 14 books, hired a driver for those 2 days. We masked up. We sat as far apart as we could. We saw raw, naked streets. We saw the homeless and essential workers utterly alone. We witnessed a noisy city, deafeningly silent. We witnessed those who defied orders to stay home. We smelled life, we smelled death. Yes, and we also felt the mighty pulse of a city that refuses to lose. Neither of us had been to the 5 boroughs in one day. We knew we had to see for ourselves, to see for you. This is our record of Hope Wanted for New York City and for our world. And I might add to that with our sentiments that we know that our city will recover. And I personally have always seen this exhibition and this collection of photographs as sort of a way for us to reach out to New York and help get through these difficult days that we are still encountering. Okay, can we start the slides, please? The first thing I wanted to show you, and I believe that some of you have probably visited the exhibition, but for those of you who haven't, I just wanted to give a quick peek at what it looks like in our back lot. We have grassed it over, some of you might know from our exhibitions there last summer, the summer before last summer now. So what we have done is we've made it a quiet place for contemplation. And here you see the beginning of it showing Manhattan and Queens. Next, please. And then we round the corner, we get to the back of I think it was Bronx and Brooklyn you were looking at before. Now you're going to be looking at Manhattan and then Queens and then Staten Island. In the center, you see a small booth that we have set up. And that is for people to go and concentrate, to contemplate, and also to give us their ideas. They can record their ideas and their reactions and their thoughts privately in that small booth, obviously opened very much so that we are complying with standards set for outside gatherings. And next, please. Here you have a close-up view of some of the images. They are all on vinyl sheets so that they are impervious to the weather. Next, please. And then finally, this image. And the image that you see in the middle are actually, Kevin and Kay, you can chime in. Those are the two of you and the driver. Do either of you want to make a comment on that? Are they on?
Yes, it's actually
Kevin.
Kay shot the photograph. It's actually me and a Japanese American visual artist named Amy Asid, who is from Queens, and then there's the driver that we worked with that day, Mr. Hani in the back. And so that's Kay's photo. It's one of my favorite photos that Kay took for the exhibit, actually.
Why is it one of your favorite photos?
Because it's in April. It's at the peak of the first wave of the pandemic for our city. We were the center, as folks know, in the country, and that represented the social distancing that was mandatory, and we wanted to kind of capture that. And so we were there to shoot her and other folks in Queens, and I just had the idea. I said, hey, what if we just, of course, have our mask on and we do a shot where we're spread out, and it turns out to be, I just love it. It's black and white. It's just a beautiful image. And I think it really kind of captures the both the distancing, the isolation, the loneliness, all those things that people have felt, through this pandemic.
And Kay, I thought that what you captured so beautifully in this is the way you set it up so that you see the bare trees. And I think that just makes it look even more desolate and more lonely, and really captured the way a lot of us felt at that time, exposed. I mean, exposed even though we were all inside. And it's not a cheery picture, but it is in terms of, I think, the stances of the three of you, Kevin, because you're not cowering, you're standing strong.
Right.
And I think that's what we all have to do. And Kay, you caught that as well.
Yeah, I feel like it was a really, representational of the times, that we're in.
Very much so. Okay, so let's start our slideshow, which we're going to visit all 5 boroughs. And we are starting with the Bronx. And I would think that we should start with Mama Tanya on the far right. Tell us about visiting her, because I know that you visited her. You had to go up into her apartment. Her whole family had COVID at the time. Tell us what it was like.
Yeah, it was it wasn't our original idea to go up into her apartment building, but just being on the ground and trying to photograph her through the window of her, 5th or 6th floor, apartment building. We just weren't getting the images that we wanted. So we got the green light from her to come upstairs, and we did our best to socially distance and wear our masks. And yeah, it was just definitely nerve-wracking, but we were able to make these great photos of her and her family.
Could we see the next few on that sheet, please? Move it along. Thank you. So this is Mama Tanya with her family on the bottom, and on the top with one of her children. And they all had COVID at that time, correct?
That's correct.
That's correct. I mean, I think that, it was she's, just so folks know, she survived it. Her children survived it. She has 6 children from a little child. Excuse me, pardon me. Thank you so much. Thank you. From a little child up into an 18-year-old who just left for college. And so this was a very profound time for her. Some background, Mama Tanya is an urban farmer. She's a feminist leader in the community, working especially with women of color and girls of color in the South Bronx. She lives in one of the poorest communities in New York City in the country, but she's done an amazing amount of work with her life. And so she's someone that's very special. And she actually had been posting about thinking that she had COVID and then realizing that she did once she got tested. And so our original plan, as Kay said, was to go to her window. If you notice around the exhibit, most of the folks, pretty much everyone else is outside, or they're in a doorway, or they're in a window. But we couldn't get a clear shot of, Kay couldn't get a clear shot of Mama Tanya. So we made the decision, we need to go in, and we could barely breathe because there was poor ventilation in the hallways, and she lived up 3 or 4 flights from what I recall. And there was actually a young person playing on their iPhone and smoking a cigarette. And so we were also dealing with that. And then once we got there, Kay was able to get these really brilliant shots from a distance. but it was hairy. I mean, we, both of us, thankfully never contracted coronavirus at all, but you all can imagine who are listening and watching that, you know, when we made the decision to go out there, we also realized, as the introduction said, that Marilyn read eloquently, that this is a very dicey proposition to our own health. But we felt compelled that we had to document our city in a way that hadn't been done. We saw pictures from Brooklyn, from Manhattan, but the question we kept asking, what about the entire city? Let's go to those places that the media is not going, and that was the point of doing this work.
So you ended up on this street. Is this street scene that we see on the up on now, is that near Mama Tanya's? And
that's on the block, yeah.
It is.
And this is a street that obviously we all know is usually teeming with people. Or the next one, which is Yankee Stadium.
Yeah. Go Yankees. That's my baseball team. Right. I personally wanted that location.
Yeah, well, you're talking right here to a Chicagoan who was a big White Sox fan years ago. So I didn't like the Yankees at that time.
I understand.
The Yankees always won.
We did.
But again, I know that, Kay, you had made some interesting observations about this. Can you talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, just it's interesting how, like, even though there was like information about, people should probably wear their mask and be outside, like nobody here really has masks on. And they're actually like waiting for the bus in front of the, the Yankee Stadium. So yeah,
and they are observing physical distance, but I don't think even at that time, they sort of told us to wear masks, but I don't think we knew quite yet how important it was to wear masks.
Right.
Although when you took that photograph of the three of them in the street, you all were wearing masks.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Like the information was out there, definitely.
Yeah, but I don't think we all realized how very important it was to do that yet.
Right.
And of course, then the ambulance, which, there were ambulances and sirens all over then.
That's right.
Permeating the silence.
Yes.
Sort of screaming out and down the silent streets.
That's correct. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing I remember. I didn't sleep well, and I'm sure a lot of the folks on the Zoom call recalled there were sirens everywhere. I mean, the joyful noise was the 7 p.m. Applause around the city for the essential workers, but it was a lot because you just wondered who were in those ambulances, where were they going, were they going to be okay or not, and so these kind of thoughts. And it's funny, Kay showing this picture. I've seen these images many times, but I forgot that these folks in the foreground of this Yankee Stadium picture did not have masks on. Some folks did, and some folks didn't.
Right.
I think we knew enough that we needed to protect ourselves and not inhale stuff from people, but some folks just rolled the dice. Some folks really did. Yeah.
Okay, can we roll along? Speaking about, okay, so here. Kay, would you like to address any of these issues? I know I asked you who the woman was who's sitting in the walker.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, she's actually downstairs in her apartment building, or from her apartment building. But she's like socially distanced and, kind of in her own like vestibule. And she was like just out getting fresh air. Yeah,
right.
So I felt like that was important to capture.
Yeah. It was, because so many people who live, locked up in apartments really began to feel locked up and needed to get out in ways like this.
And get that sunshine and fresh air.
Right. Can we roll along now okay, so let's talk about this black square.
Kevin, talk about this one?
Oh.
The black square.
So we knew that we could not get to what used to be called Potter's Field in the little island off the Bronx. New Yorkers know that all of us are islands: Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island. The Bronx is the only landlocked borough, actually, except for those little islands. And now, obviously called Hart Island, I decided I needed to talk to someone because I kept getting images sent to me when people realized that Kay and I were doing this project. Hey, there's these images of unfortunately people in body bags. We saw a lot of that, heard the news about it, and how the hospitals were so full that they were putting bodies, sadly, tragically, in trucks and in refrigerators. And so I was lucky enough to be connected to a worker out there who did not want his name known for obvious reasons. He was working because he had to. He's actually a union worker in a different occupation, but he needed money at this time because, as you all know, the pandemic affected a lot of people financially, and so he was able to get work, literally dealing with the wooden coffins that were coming out to Hart Island, and it was really a deep interview because he just shared what he was feeling. There was a numbness, there. He talked about looking for names of people that he might have known because he had lived all around the city, and again was a union member, so he knew a lot of different types of people from different parts of the 5 boroughs. But he really laid it out, how the devastation of it, a lot of homeless folks, a lot of folks who were immigrants, and folks whose bodies simply were not claimed, which really broke my heart. And he reminded me that there are literally bodies there on Hart Island going all the way back to the Civil War. We always forget that, New York City, has gone through Revolutionary War, Civil War, et cetera. There were folks who had died because of the AIDS epidemic in the 80s and 90s were there. And so now this new plot of land that was being dug up, which we have in the oral history from him, of all these COVID folks who were the victims of the coronavirus. So it was really something I felt was important to include in this. And I just thought the only way to represent it, was just to have no image at all. And here it is, because it kind of represents all the people that he was talking about. Yeah.
Kay, or Kevin, one of you talked to, when we were talking about the previous slide, about how the sirens were screaming through the night.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at these images and thinking, the silence of these images is screaming as well, in a totally different way. But the silence of the city and the way you two captured it, either in what the people said, or what you wrote, Kevin, or Kay, what you photographed and documented, is screaming of silence.
Right.
So.
Yeah. If I could just add one other thing, I mean, Kay's a native New Yorker. I've lived here for 30 years, so this is my home for the rest of my life. 9/11 was always in the back of my mind, and the feeling that we felt when 9/11 happened back in 2001. And so, I remember feeling powerless back then. And so for us, she's a phenomenal photographer. Kay took over 1,800 photos over these 2 days as we went to 5 boroughs the first day, 4 boroughs, not including Staten Island the second day. Was just to how can we help our city? How can we tell these stories and these emotions that our people are feeling and the things that they're going through? But at the same time, give voice to this silence, Marilyn, that you just described, what it felt like, what it looked like to people.
And we'll see that in some of the images coming up. So could we go to Brooklyn, please? And let's focus in on the second image from the right. That one, yes, thanks. Kay.
Yeah, this is actually one of my favorite photos, just because it shows the resilience of kids, and it's kind of a sign of hope that they'll still find a time and a place to just to enjoy life.
And they were here.
Yeah.
And yet now we're thinking about the children quite a bit, because I think I remarked to you earlier, it seems like they're going to be among one of the groups that is going to sustain longer term damage by not being able to go to school, not being able to socialize and learn, how to socialize. So, this is tough for all different kinds of people.
I know some children that don't even want to go out and leave their home. So it's
it's the fear, Yeah. I had even said to somebody once, I'm getting this stay-at-home siege mentality, where I don't want to go out, and I'm an adult and aware of what's happening to me. But when the kids feel that way and they quite don't understand why they feel that way, it's very difficult for them, and it's difficult for the parents of those children and the grandparents of those children.
Yeah. I mean, there's no other way to say it. This is a traumatic event, and your children. I'm glad that Kay captured this, because on the one hand, you see them, these 2 little girls, trying to have fun, enjoy their lives in the midst of all of this. But at the same time, they both have masks on, because it's the reality that they're now growing up in, that they've lived through a global pandemic.
Okay, so we have to move along. I could keep you on here for probably an hour, but we don't have that time. So why don't we go to Manhattan now, unless there's another one in Brooklyn that you wanted to talk about?
No, I'm good.
No, we could. Yeah.
All right, let's go to Manhattan. Okay, so the Apollo Theater, which is the first one on the right.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things I liked about this, and then I'll let you comment, Kate, is that they had a different slogan up all the time, right? I know I've seen the things from the Apollo Theater, and every time I see it, it's got a different slogan.
Right.
And it makes relevant so many things we've heard before by these musicians, and yet taking on a completely different meaning now. Kay or Kevin?
That's true. Yeah, yeah, you're right about the marquee scrolling, because also Bill Withers, he passed away, so they were also giving tribute to him. But when I saw this marquee, you know, keep your head up, it's, yeah, as you said, it's just relevant to the times right now. It's like a hopeful.
And the irony of it for me is that my next book is actually a biography of Tupac Shakur. So I didn't realize Kay had shot that photo. I remember we got up on 125th Street, but she went ahead to shoot it. I didn't realize that was there. I said, that's the irony of it all. That
could be the title of your book.
It could be. It could be.
I did actually think about you when I made that photo too.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Can we scroll over? Slowly? Let's see. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Grand Central. Yeah.
We've seen a lot of photographs of empty Grand Central, but I think your point of view on this, where you were standing and the way you positioned it, and then went outside of Grand Central. And from far away, all three of these are in the Grand Central area.
Yeah.
Can you address that?
Yeah, if like on the inside of Grand Central, like you actually see on the clock that it's rush hour. It's like 6:30, and you know, just seeing it, yeah, just so empty at rush hour. You know, even 42nd Street, like there's like not even just one bus scrolling by. And then on Lexington Avenue here, where the people are walking, that entrance was actually closed. So it's just an interesting, I don't know, way of.
I mean, it's either just essential workers or fire people or police officers, and that was basically it. And you saw folks who were homeless. You know, that's really all we saw out there. I mean, can you imagine Grand Central Station, which is busy all the time? Just, you know, we literally walked in and it's just no one there. Just nothing. It's really surreal to experience that. You know, it's one thing to see it on TV, to see it, you know, on the news, but for us to actually walk into these spaces and realize this has really got everyone locked up. We're all under, you know, kind of this lock and key because of this pandemic. It really drives home the point of it all. And
you also see the soaring architecture in a way that we were never meant to see it, I think. Yeah. I mean, we see the architecture now, speaking as a person who loves architecture, in a way that I hope we never can see it again, even though I love this building, but to see it absent of all of the busy people scurrying all over the place, that's part of the architecture as well. And so half of what Grand Central is, or 3/4 of what Grand Central is missing here. Mm-hmm.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, let's scroll along or we'll never get to the end. This could go on forever. Okay, so here. Is this the 7 o'clock clap?
Oh, yes, it is. It is.
That's in Chelsea, Manhattan. Yeah.
All right, keep scrolling. I'm told I don't have a lot of time left, so you all can ask questions. Okay, let's go on to Queens.
Will we be able to see people too when we do the questions?
I don't know.
That would be nice.
Okay. Well, we'll see what they can do. Okay, so can we go to the next slide, please? Okay. All right, let's start at the far right. Tell us who this is. You know who. You don't know this person, right?
We actually don't. Yeah, we don't know this person, but yeah, we were just in a neighboring car, and you know, I just saw her with her protective gear on, you know, and I just felt it was a good one. She had a great energy too, so I wanted to include her.
I don't know if you said it. So the driver had an SUV, so we literally social distance inside of the SUV. Our original idea was to actually ride bicycles around the 5 boroughs.
Oh gosh.
You know, we weren't going to get on the subway, but the social distancing, where I actually sat in the trunk area the whole time, right, Kay? I think most of the time I was in the trunk area of the SUV.
Right. I felt so bad for you, like every bump.
It's cool. We had to get the job done. We had to document.
Okay, but before we talk about the next two, I want to remind you all that if you have questions, submit it to the Q&A now, and we'll get to them after we're finished speaking. Okay, that's my announcement. Now let's go to the next two. Wait, go back. There, stop. Let's talk about what this is.
Oh, Staten Island Ferry, like an empty, yeah.
Empty, like We Will See LaGuardia was, right?
Right.
And to the left of that is one woman who actually gave a test. She did give an oral history. Could we see the last two with that woman, and then she's standing on the porch? Thank you.
Oh, yes.
Alone, alone, but it's like you see these people alone, but they're alone together inside all of those houses.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's this feeling of emptiness, but togetherness in a certain way that we haven't experienced before. Families together in a way that they haven't experienced before, but nobody's there. I mean, it's
Right.
such a conundrum. So,
and as I was photographing her, she was actually like really engulfed in work because like there was I forgot what it was, but she was dealing with a crises. So she couldn't even really take a break at the start of the photo shoot.
okay, next. So it's this phone thing. It's either the Zoom or the phone. That's how we've stayed in touch with everybody. And obviously this is, go ahead. The bridge. And okay, now let's talk about the man outside the car.
Right. Yeah, that was our driver, Hani, who also gave us the oral history of, how he felt driving across the 5 boroughs.
Yes, which is very important to get his perspective. We wanted to make sure all kinds of voices were heard for this.
Mm-hmm.
There's what I call an intentional diversity around this exhibit, generationally, culturally, racially, occupationally, all of it. I think that's also a beautiful snapshot of New York City's diversity.
Right.
Okay, next. Can we keep moving? All right. Once again, you have people here waiting for the ferry.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that same kind of emptiness that we saw at Grand Central Station, a little bit more populated. And maybe it's because a lot of these essential workers took the ferry to work. I was trying to figure out why there were more people in this image than we saw in Grand Central.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have an answer to that. It was just something I was thinking about. 2 people together and then one man on top sitting there alone. The loneliness is deafening.
Yeah.
Okay, can we move on?
Queens.
Here we go with those photographs of you. Okay, can we start on the right, please? Do you want to talk about these two? I was taken by the one on top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the fact that he was, asking for money, at the height of the pandemic. Yeah.
And below, is that a postal worker? I can't tell from.
She was dropping off mail, but she's like, maybe she was doing running her business or something, but I don't know, somebody wrote with a Sharpie on the, like above the mailbox, COVID-19. I don't know, I just thought it was like an interesting photo with, she's dressed in her protective gear.
One question has come in to say, did you find different attitudes towards COVID in the different boroughs?
That's an interesting question. I think it was the same attitude everywhere. People were social distancing. There was mostly masks, but there was, what we also found across the boroughs was folks who were gathering in large groups and did not wear masks. And so I just really think it depended on how seriously people were taking it. I mean, I think we saw extremes out there, folks who were extra cautious, extra protective, and some folks who did not take it seriously or for whatever reasons, and chose to gather in large groups and just did it, which was something to behold, honestly, because we know that this has killed now nearly 200,000 Americans as of this date. Yeah.
Another question is, many of the photographs have a mournful quality. Was that an artistic choice or more a pure reflection of the mood of the time?
I feel like it's different if you view it in person. There are some photos that actually signify like kind of rebirth. Like as we were going out, there was also like we were just spring was coming up, so the trees were blooming and flowering. So I felt that signified like rebirth and renewal. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Go on, Kevin.
No. I just had a humble request. Because we've all been so isolated for the last 6 months, I would really, really, really like to see people. Even if they can't talk, we have to mute them. Can we at least see the people that are in the group? I just think it's important. Can we just at least wave at them and just see them? I'm just asking. As I said to Oscar, I did a group last night with 200 people where we saw them and we talked and everything. And I'm just humbly asking, because I just think human connection, particularly because of what this exhibit is about, is so, so important. And I just feel that in my bones that that's something that we should consider doing here. I'd love to see who's actually in the room and just say hello to people, if that's all right.
They're working on it, but they don't think they can do that now that they're in midstream. It was the way it was set up.
All they have to do is unmute people. That's all they have to do. Yeah.
Not if it's a Zoom webinar.
Okay.
I don't know. I guess they said we're in webinar mode so that they can't unmute people.
Okay.
So I'm going to please ask to have your questions come in, please, so that we can answer some and start addressing some of your questions. Have you been back to the locations of those photos? How do you think the mood has changed, if at all?
Yeah, I'm definitely starting to see like more, people out. I have not been back to Staten Island though, I must say. But yeah, people are starting to come out more.
Yeah, I've only really, I don't think I've been to all 5 boroughs since April. Manhattan, that's it. Just Manhattan. I've been to the exhibit, obviously, but we still, I'm still conscious of where I go because of everything that's still happening with us. Yeah. But we have stayed in touch with everyone that we've talked with. We've stayed in touch. Obviously, we needed to do make sure their oral histories were tight and just checking in on people, seeing how they're doing. And I can tell you the folks in the exhibit who Kay shot are all really thrilled to be a part of something this is historic. And I forgot to say this, Marilyn. We absolutely want to thank you and Margie and Louis and the entire incredible team of the New York Historical Society, because we literally turned this exhibit around in 2 months, which is unheard of.
Unbelievable. Speaking as a curator, this is the fastest, quickest thing I've ever done. So and it couldn't have been done without the two of you. I mean, the two of you were the major workers in this, and we just sort of supported what we needed to get you out there. So it takes a whole team of people to get anything up, but to do it this fast was really amazing.
We had a great team, a phenomenal team.
Well, it was good. It was good. Another question is there one photo that you feel represents the hope of going forward rather than the despair that we are going through now?
Yeah, I would think the children for me.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
In a way, their innocence is what can get us through these times, perhaps. Kevin, did you have a comment to make about that?
No, I agree with Kay. I love that image. I mean, I'm also, if you could see behind me, there's 4 skateboards. So just the fact that the 2 little girls are on skateboarders, so that made me happy. I was like, that's a great picture.
Another question. Did anything surprise you during this photo shoot or in the process of putting it together?
Wow. Anything surprised us when we were out there, they mean, for those 2 days?
Probably, I think so.
Whew.
This might support it, the next question. Did people wonder why you were there, and did they ask why they were being photographed? And did they care if they were being photographed?
We mostly asked people, didn't we?
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah, we mostly ask people. Like, there's a great image in Queens of a homeless gentleman with a sign, and he had his mask on. I just thought it was a powerful image, and did we sneak some pictures? Like there's some shots. I'm not sure if it's in the exhibit, but the shots when we did get some subway shots at the elevated stop on 125th Street
Oh,
uptown.
right.
You know, where we kind of jumped into the car and then jumped out as the doors were closing. You know what I mean? We had a few moments like that. One of the funnier moments, and even though it's sad, was when we went to LaGuardia Airport. We went in there, and I'm a frequent flyer, so I'm not used to LaGuardia or Kennedy being empty. It was empty, and we asked one of the workers. I said, "Are the planes flying?" He looked at us and laughed. He said, "Yeah, the planes are flying. No one's on the planes, but they're still flying." We were like, "Wow." And just to kind of, that's between LaGuardia and the great images that Kay has of Grand Central. I mean, think about it. We got over 8 million people in New York City. We're the media capital, the financial capital, the communications capital, fashion capital, so many things here. And this is one of the great cities in the world. And everybody's inside, you know, away from it, you know. It's almost like, it was almost like being in some sort of novel or some sort of short story where Kay and I are just out there exploring our city in a way that you could never do it usually, because there's always people around. So you see things and feel things in a very different kind of way.
You know, it's interesting because I've seen a lot of photographs come over the transom in the past few months. And there was one photographer who went out onto the streets, you know, probably about the same time you were there, and photographed all these landmark buildings with no people around. And they almost look like building models. And in ways that perhaps we were never meant to see that. And when I think of your images of LaGuardia or Penn Station or Grand Central, I live in New Jersey, so I go through Penn Station all the time and don't speak highly of it very often, and often wish it was less busy. But I think it would be very disconcerting to go and see it totally empty, completely empty. And when you captured that, it made me realize how much the energy of the crowds that we used to encounter and will again, I firmly believe, what that means to us. And will we look at that differently when we get back to a different, you know, or to a normal, or, you know, whatever that might mean. But I think we will appreciate what we didn't have for a while. And you really captured what we didn't have, which in that way becomes not only a elegant photograph, but a very important document. More questions. What will happen to the exhibit after the museum moves on? A book, a website? Well, interesting, you should ask that. We are looking into making it a website. Do you guys have any intentions of turning it into a book?
I would love to, actually. I'm actually looking into, you know, different publishing companies or anything, so.
That would be cool. I mean, you know, it's funny because I'll be honest with you all, before we came to you, Marilyn, and the museum, we actually talked about a book first, and a literary agent said to me, "No one wants to look at a book like this." And we were like, "But it's not
depressing."
Yeah. And what we have found is the opposite of it. Both of us have been to the exhibit multiple times, and people are appreciative. They're thankful, you know, because not only are we capturing history as it's happening, which is the brilliance and the beauty of the New York Historical Society, but it also is a healing space where people can reflect. You know, you see people walking around silently, they're listening to the oral histories, they're standing in front of this image or that image for a long period of time. I love the fact that, and again, you know, I appreciate the credit you gave us, Marilyn, but again, Kay and I and you, the whole team, to come up with the trees and just the space that exists, you know, that it would be great if that could be a book. You know, the text is there, the photos are there. It's just a matter of a publisher organizing it. We don't have to do any more work, really. Just put it together.
I mean, it was a real ode to New York. I said that to you from the beginning, but it was an ode to the city. And this is something that, you know, you sort of touched on. Have all the subjects in the photos seen the exhibition, and what kind of reaction have they had?
Some of them we didn't get the names of, but the people that we got the oral histories from, yeah, they've mostly come to see it, right?
Yeah,
they've seen photos of it.
Mama Tanya keeps saying she's going to get there. She's going to get there. She's real busy. And then Dr. Mark Nason, who's a great scholar at Fordham University, he will get there. He was concerned at first. I mean, he's in his 70s now, so he's just concerned about traveling around, you know, as a senior, you know, but they'll come, you know, folks are coming. And what's beautiful is that Kay and I constantly getting tagged on social media, people that have been at the exhibit. So they're tagging us on Instagram or other social media platforms saying, I'm here, or I just saw this. This is really beautiful. And so it's really moving because it is a gift to New York City. It is an ode to New York City. And even how I wrote the poems, I decided to write poems for each of the boroughs because I wanted to have elements of what each borough meant, you know, historically. And, you know, for the Bronx, for example, I thought about one of our great photographers, Richard Avedon, being from the Bronx.
Yes,
And
one of my favorites.
yeah, and Kay being in that tradition. I mean, he documented so many things, including the civil rights movement along with Gordon Parks, you know, and I just said, Kay, these photos that you've taken, these will be around 100 years from now. These will be around 200 years from now. People will be looking and saying, well, what happened in New York in 2020? And here it is. You know? So the photos matter. They're so important to this.
Well, I firmly believe that. Photos talk as much as words. And I think that,
Yeah.
that the combination of the words that you wrote, Kevin, and the photos that you took, Kay, really give us an idea of what we went through and what we continue to go through. Another question, I think I have a few more minutes. Have people, subjects, or visitors reacted to the photographs in ways you didn't expect, perhaps revealed interpretations that hadn't occurred to you?
Well, for me, like when I was at the exhibit, a couple came up to me and they told me how they experienced like the quarantine and the things that they did that, you know, they wouldn't normally get a chance to do, which was like camp out or have a picnic at on Park Avenue, like in the street, because there were no cars going by. So it was just like a nice plot of, you know, grass, and they sat down and had a nice quiet picnic. So it was interesting, people's, you know, experiences.
The creativity, the resiliency of New Yorkers has been amazing. The things that we just do, we've done, and we've been forced to do outside, you know, or we've been allowed to do because, as Kay said, there was not people around for a while. There wasn't as much traffic. Has really been amazing to behold, you know, which is beautiful. Even the way this exhibit, I mean, you told me we'd have an outdoor exhibit with social distancing. I'm like, no, how does that work? But here it is. We did it. You know, that speaks to New York.
Well, it speaks to New York, but it also speaks to the people that are coming to it and will come to it through the end of November in the rain and the cold. So, you know, it will be open all that time. As you traveled through the boroughs, did you see any anger expressed by those without masks or social distancing?
Wow. Anger? No, I believe the question is referring to the kind of anti-mask movement that exists outside of New York City and other parts of the country. I just think that there was a kind of a, you know, I mean, the thing that struck me, I'll just be very direct about it, you know, seeing young Black males in Harlem and young Hasidic Jewish males in Brooklyn, two different groups of people, same day, both unmasked, was really profound. I'll say that. One was for spiritual reasons, cultural reasons, I think with the Hasidic Jewish community, I think with the Black young men in Harlem, you know, working class Black males, just feeling like, well, life is hard enough. I deal with racism, I deal with classism. What else could possibly harm me at this point? I'm good. And so that was in the back of my mind a lot, you know, just the different reasons why people were not wearing masks and still choosing to congregate in large numbers as if nothing was going on, you know, and that was profound to witness.
That sounds very profound. Indeed.
Yeah.
And I think that we've all found profound moments in our lives as we think back on, you know, what's been going on here since March.
Absolutely.
One last question. Then we'll finish up. In the end, do you find the title of the exhibition has been fulfilled? Is it Hope Still Wanted, or did you find it?
These are great questions, by the way.
They are. I mean, we're still, you know, in the midst of the pandemic, so I feel like we're, you know, kind of still, like we're on our way to recovery, but we're still searching for it. Or
still a lot more to go, we're afraid.
Yeah. I mean, you know, obviously, you know, the title, I thought of the title from Help Wanted ads in, you know, the old school newspapers in New York City. You know, I mean, we do want hope. We do want hope. It's not just the pandemic, it's everything that we've been dealing with. And people know what I'm saying in this country over the last couple of years that have really, really affected all of us. And so I think that we have to find some hope. You know, for me, I think about what we survived in the 60s. You know, I think about, you know, Bobby Kennedy's speech when Dr. King was killed, and him calling for hope, calling for compassion and empathy. And so when I think of the title Hope Wanted, it's like, we've got to see that we're part of the human family. It doesn't matter if you're Black, you're Jewish, you're straight, you're gay, you're rich, you're poor. We are part of the human family, and we have seen remarkable displays by New Yorkers and people around the country of coming together and supporting each other. But it can't just be when it's 9/11 or this pandemic. This has got to become part of who we are. And we know it's in us as New Yorkers and Americans because we've displayed incredible support and generosity to each other during times of crises. And so when I think of Hope Wanted, it's also like, how do we take all of this energy that we have felt as we've had this time inside to think about who we are and where we are and what this all means for us, and be what Bobby Kennedy said, that tiny ripple of hope for each other. That's what I think about with Hope Wanted, that tiny ripple of hope.
And I will wrap this up by saying hope needed as much as hope wanted.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Definitely.
So we've run out of time. I know that I could go on with you guys for hours. Thanks again to both you, Kevin and Kay. And by the way, Kevin was sending a wave to all of you and, welcoming you all. And thank you all for so much for your participation and your exceptional support of the New York Historical Society. We look forward to seeing you back here a week from tonight for the next episode of Curators Confidential Women March with Valerie Paley, Senior Vice President and Chief Historian at the New York Historical Society and Director of the Center for Women's History. Good evening, everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you guys again.
Thank you.
It's great to see you, Marilyn.
Yeah.